Alright, so y'all, this is just We the People News, okay? I know I'm beating a dead horse on the oath of office, but if they do not have the correct oath of office, then what authority do they actually really do have, right? They play off the ignorance of we the people. We can do cop watching, we can do public recording and all that, and they may come after you, and we may have some standing in the courtroom. But legitimately, what authorities do they actually have if they do not have the correct oath of office? So I may be beating a dead horse, and it's because, number one, they're not taking the correct oath of office, and we need to wake up. And we're waking up, people, but we need to stay awake and keep moving forward. Do not fall backwards. All right. This is going to be a two-part video because it's 36 minutes, but it's very important for us to understand and learn.
Good morning. It's Rob Ryder on August 28th, 2022. And today, Emergency Management Incident Report 22-141-128. My Staff Sergeant Robert Allen Radlewski, U.S. Army veteran, also known as Rob Ryder. And my email address is courtofrecord@aol.com. And so this video has to do with yesterday I called in 911 and reported an emergency and the little fiasco that happened soon after that, and it wasn't that big a deal. But eventually I did get to put in an incident report, which is really the idea. And so now there is one. And this was kind of a continuation of my last couple of videos, which are on Rob Ryder on YouTube, with 3 B's, ROBBBRYDER, which had to do with Avery, supreme law of the land, and constitutional sheriff, call 911, report the election emergency. And if you don't remember, didn't watch these before, well, in Avery, that's a Supreme Court case, 1968, where it was determined that when you have single members elected to represent a group of people, those groups of people have to be by population, not by territory. So in other words, you can't necessarily send all the township supervisors to sit on a board to be the county board of supervisors, because not all townships are equally populated, which is how they had done it prior to that. Well, because of this, they had to change that and go to county commissioners who will sit on, make a county commissioner board, and each of those commissioners has a commissioner district that's based on population. Well, that's actually also your election precinct, because the county has become the local government. It's no longer the township, right? So the county's acting as a municipality. You know, I can show you where Kent County says it's a municipality, so it's really not that difficult to grasp, right? That you can have county local government, or you can have county township local government. Now that's what they say in Michigan. Your state's going to be similar, but at the end of the day, it's the county. The county's been divided into election districts or into commissioner districts, and each of those is a precinct. Well, that is the precinct that we're supposed to be, for myself, that I should be registered as a qualified elector. But when you talk to the county, they have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, well then, constitutional sheriff, I had had a chance to talk to a, quote unquote constitutional sheriff, who really isn't. He doesn't have proper oath of office, but he could be if he did his paperwork right. And then I was hoping, well, why don't you guys call it, sheriff? Why don't you call it into emergency management and put your other hat on, right? Because this isn't a local issue for the county. It's an emergency management issue, which is national. And that's what 911 is meant to be, is it's in the national emergency number. Well, I hadn't heard back from him, so, I finally said, well, I guess I'm going to just do it myself. I'll wing it and see how it goes. And so I did, and so this video is going to be, what I said and what I did, so I can make my own public record of it. But right now there is an incident report, and so what happens? I called 911. I told them I wanted to read a little statement in, about a crime, and was that going to be a problem? She started to say something about, well, I should call somebody else, so I just started reading it because I wasn't going to let her say no. I'm going to go ahead and read the damn thing. And I didn't get all the way through it, and she hung up on it. I was like one paragraph from being done. I told her it was going to take 5 minutes to do, right? So I just started reading it. I was trying to read it slow enough; it would be clearly said, and sometimes I get amped up and slur my words a bit, and all the other things that can happen. So she hung up on me and said, "Well, shit." So I called 911 back. I said, "Hey, you hung up on me. I wasn't done, reporting my emergency." And she said, "Well, you're quoting a bunch of laws and stuff. We don't have time for that." I said, "This is an emergency phone number. But would you like to talk to a deputy?" Or I actually said, "Well, what's your emergency? Is it police, fire, or ambulance?" Right? Those are the choices to give you. So I guess I said, "Well, it's police." And thinking later, well, it's not really police, it's emergency management. But she said, "Well, would you like a deputy to call you back?" I said, "Yes, please have a deputy call me." She did, and 10 minutes later, a deputy called me. And I started to explain it to him. So, but what I got out of all that is that she didn't necessarily tell me that was my emergency an emergency management issue, which is different than police, because police is that's local. And so when I'm talking to this deputy, and said I'm trying to report an emergency, a crime of public officer impersonation. And the guy said, "Well, look, I don't think that any of county prosecutor is going to prosecute something like that. They're worried about being sued." And I said, "Well, this really isn't for the county prosecutor anyways. This is, it's not a local issue. It's emergency management. I'm really trying to talk to emergency management or Homeland Security about this." And that's when he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, there is a dispatcher for emergency management. He's not here today." So I don't forget that I said this because, there'll be more pieces in this conversation. But what they said, what he told me is that, if you have an emergency like this, you should call into the non-emergency number, right, and tell them you want to file an incident report for a crime. And then they're going to direct you, right? But when you're doing that, tell them it's an emergency management crime, right? Not necessarily police police issue. It's not local, it's national, right? Now, in England, this would fall right in line with England. So in England, the sheriff had two different jurisdictions. He had a local jurisdiction, he had the king's jurisdiction, or royal jurisdiction. And the things he had to do for the king were kept by the coroner, who was the keeper of the king's pleas. And the coroner was supposed to make sure that the king was taking care of or that the sheriff was taking care of the king's business that he had in his list of things for the sheriff to do from the king. And otherwise, the sheriff was just working for the local jurisdiction, which is all the local thugs and robbers that call themselves the government. But they're really not. So, it's okay. Well, the sheriff can wear two hats. I just need to take it to the other hat, which is emergency management. And now we'll see if it is, because I did get an incident report.
That being said, he was true and correct about the sheriff's authority in England, okay? Until about the 1250, okay? Then it changed from the sheriff, from the king and the people, to only being the people because the king was acting unlawfully, all right? And pressing his will unlawfully against the people. So the sheriff started working for the people in England, and that's the reason why today in the United States we have the sheriff for the people. It's not for the government at all. Now it's gotten added to it, to their ignorance and our ignorance.
So, like I said, this video is really just for me to, make my report public. And so I'm going to read my report and what I wrote to them afterwards and show the exhibits that I sent to them, and, we'll see where it goes. So give me just a second here. Alrighty, so I had this written up so I could just, read it as my statement on the 911, and so that's what I did. So I, Robert Allen Berlusky, U.S. Army veteran, DOD ID number 12112800006, need the next 5 minutes to record my emergency sworn statement identifying public officer imposters and their ongoing crimes against the United States. Please be patient. And that's what I asked the lady, so will you give me time to read this? And she said, well, you should probably call, she was talking about calling the Department of Justice. I just went, well, I swear, these crimes are a man-made disaster caused by individuals impersonating, falsely representing, or falsely acting as public officers who are terrorizing state inhabitants by offending the 4th Article of the Constitution of the States Republic to form a government guarantee, and are politically disenfranchising citizens of the United States in violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Specifically, Gretchen Esther Whitmer did not qualify the office of Governor of Michigan. First, Whitmer avoided executing the oath required of all state officers that satisfies the 6th Article of the Constitution of the United States, as found in an act to regulate time and manner of administering certain oaths, signed into law by President Washington on 1 June 1789, commonly known as 1 Stat 23. Secondly, Whitmer filed a counterfeit of the oath required by the Constitution of Michigan of 1963. The counterfeit oath Whitmer filed is an improper oath. It is not executed in Whitmer's full legal name, and it was administered by a person unqualified under Michigan law to administer the governor an oath. We'll look at all that stuff in just a minute. There is a vacancy in the offices of governor and commander-in-chief caused by Whitmer's failure to record constitutional oaths. Whitmer is not the governor. She's a public officer imposter, violating the Constitution of the United States, Section 217C of the Michigan Penal Code, and the Michigan Military Code of Justice, who uses a counterfeit of Michigan's Great Seal on acts of terrorism disguised as executive orders and other alleged official documents.
Pause it there again. Now, every state is doing this. Texas has 2 seals. One for the Republic and one for the corporation, which is what they're using, the corporation one. Okay? They're not doing for the Texas Republic. And that's for every single state. One for the corporation state and one for the Republic state. And they're not using the Republic. And that's the reason why we're losing the Constitution rights.
Seal she uses does not conform to MCL, that would be Michigan Compiled Law 2.42, which describes the Great Seal. An investigation will prove Whitmer has many conspirators with the same constitutional oath defects who impersonate, falsely represent himself or herself as, or falsely act as public officer or public employee, and prepare, issue, serve, execute, or otherwise act to further the operation of the legal process or unauthorized process that affects or purports to affect persons or property. That's right out of the law. The same being a violation of MCL 752.17c. All right, Whitmer and her conspirators usurping as public officer are imposters who daily offend the United States Criminal Code's conspiracy to commit offense or to defraud the United States, 18 U.S.C. 371. Secondly, I and other county residents are politically disenfranchised by county officer imposters from registering as a qualified elector in and from the county single-member election precinct we inhabit. This is a violation of the Constitution of the United States as interpreted by Supreme Court of the United States in Avery versus Midland County et al., case number 390, U.S. 474 from 1968. Michigan Election Law, Section 499, the MCL 499 requires qualified electors execute a Secretary of State approved elector registration application and swear under oath to its statements before the elector registration clerk. In my case, Kent County, Michigan is the local county municipality I reside in, making the Kent County clerk my registration clerk. However, that office's alleged incumbent is a public officer imposter who's unqualified to register me as a qualified elector of the county election precinct I reside in. Take notice that elector registration is a separate registration from voter registration. Elector registration under MCL 168.499 requires that an affidavit be administered and recorded, whereas no affidavit is required for a voter registration. Not registering electors in accordance with Michigan election law is an unconstitutional political disenfranchisement. This lack of proper election registration and usurpation of public office by imposters are man-made disasters requiring immediate relief. End of statement. I never got quite that far. I got about to right here where I said take notice and that's my phone on now. But anyways, that was the what I wanted to read into the record. Got most of it in on 911. Got the rest of it in, or actually I didn't get it in. Then I talked to a deputy, and he gave me his email address. And I sent him some information, and he gave me a incident number, and hopefully it's going today to the emergency management dispatcher. So I might not have said this when I was first talking. So if you call the non-emergency number and you tell me you want to file an incident report, you're actually going to be talking to a dispatcher. Because when you call 911, all they're going to do is turn it over to a dispatcher. Right? And so in my case, it went to the sheriff dispatcher. But it doesn't mean it isn't an emergency management dispatcher also. Now
I'm going to pause it here again right quick. All right. Just so you guys would know. All right. Erie versus Midland County. Okay. That is Midland, Texas. Just for some of y'all who don't know in other states that may receive this. Okay. If you guys want to look that up, look it up. Okay. Alrighty.
So I interpreted what the guy was telling me, so see what happens. See if I get a phone call today and follow up on this. So hang on a second. So anyways, I talked to the sheriff dispatcher for a bit, and he gave me an email address, said, send your information here. This is the incident report, and the emergency management dispatcher isn't here today, but I'll get it to him for tomorrow. So I did, and so this is what I told him. Political disenfranchisement and other crimes against the United States. Emergency Management Homeland Security Incident Report 22-141-128. Now, of course, he didn't say that's what it was, but I'm saying that's what it is. Right? I want to make perfectly clear, it has nothing to do with local jurisdiction. Right? This is a national issue. So, something I want to show is this is on the state constitution for Michigan under local government section, where it talks about sheriff, right?
Alrighty, and just for you guys know, in different states, you're going to have the different states' constitution, but it's the same principle. Just the wordings are going to change. Every state's within the same guidelines, okay? This video is a little bit longer than I talked on, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Until next time, Decent We the People News. Bye, y'all.